There are 32 teams in the NFL. Each team has a starting quarterback, and only one of those QBs can lead their team to a Super Bowl victory at the end of the season. However, not all of these Super Bowl winning quarterbacks have led their team to a ring. Some have been carried by their defense, some have been lucky, and some have just been plain out bad. So here are the worst QBs to ever win a Super Bowl. Throughout the Super Bowl era, 34 QBs have won the Lombardi Trophy. Of those 34, however, 10 of them will never be inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame. Now, one of those quarterbacks actually won 2 Super Bowls, and that man was Jim Plunkett. When Jim Plunkett played for the Raiders, he would have major success in the 80s in his 8 seasons. However, let's take a look at his stats. Overall, Plunkett has a bad quarterback rating at 67.5. For reference, Tim Tebow, who could barely even throw the ball, has a better rating. Plunkett also has an exact .500 winning percentage as a starter, and has 34 more career interceptions and touchdowns. For the love of God, Plunkett hasn't even made a Pro Bowl. So how did he win not 1 but 2 Super Bowls with the Raiders? It just so happened that the Raiders in the 80s were awfully good, with great players such as a speedy receiver in Cliff Branch, a monster runner in Marcus Allen, and a dominant defense. Next, we have another Super Bowl winning QB with a lot of talent around him, Jim McMahon. Jim McMahon had a lot of swagger off the field. I mean, who doesn't know the Chicago Bears Super Bowl shuffle before they blew out New England in the Super Bowl? However, McMahon was not a superstar in the 80s, but just mediocre at best. Drafted out of BYU in '82, McMahon was immediately granted the starting role at Chicago and would hold a 15-win season in '85, the year that they won it all. However, in the end, it was really the Bears defense that won the Super Bowl. In that year, the Monsters of the Midway had been regarded as one of, if not the greatest defenses of all time, who only allowed 10 points in 3 playoff games. Some Hall of Fame defenders included Richard Dent, Dan Hampton, and Mike Singletary. Heading back to McMahon, 1985 marked the best season of his career, where he simply held a mediocre 15 touchdown to 11 interception ratio. Joe Gibbs. He is known as the best coach in Redskins history. Gibbs has famously won 3 Super Bowls, but all with different quarterbacks. What makes it even more impressive is that all 3 of these quarterbacks did not make the Hall of Fame. In 1982, Washington's Super Bowl winner was Joe Theismann, who was not in the Hall of Fame because his career was cut short due to a broken leg. Then, in 1987, Doug Williams won it all, becoming the first African-American QB to do so. Besides from his amazing Super Bowl performance, Williams held a losing record over his career, and his job was soon taken over by Mark Rippon, who was truly a bad QB despite having a lot of talent around him. He had one good season in '91 when the Redskins won the Super Bowl. His career soon fell apart, and a knee injury put him out of the starting lineup. As I stated earlier, there are 10 Super Bowl winning quarterbacks that are not in the Hall of Fame. We've covered 5. However, one of those quarterbacks on this list actually is in the Hall of Fame, and that is Joe Namath. Similar to Jim McMahon's swagger off the field, Joe Namath played as a QB for the Jets and shocked the Baltimore Colts 16-7 in the '69 Super Bowl. He was granted with not only being in the Hall of Fame, but with winning the Super Bowl III MVP award. In his 13 seasons, Namath has thrown 47 more picks and touchdowns, has a losing record as a starter, the worst rating as a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and a 50 completion percentage. For many years, he led the league in interceptions and has heavily been assisted by running back Matt Snell and a tough defense. A large part to Namath being in the Hall of Fame is because of his iconic guarantee, which makes many think of him as a legend. In reality, though, he is very overrated. In fact, some would go as far to say Joe Namath is the worst Hall of Famer in NFL history. Here are some honorable mentions for some bad quarterbacks that won the Super Bowl. Brad Johnson, winner in 2002 on the Bucs. Johnson ended up being an average quarterback who struggled with consistency and was backed up by a strong defense. Jeff Hostetler. Hostetler was simply a backup quarterback to Phil Simms, who won the Super Bowl heavily due to running back Otis Anderson and the kicker Scott Norwood's missed wide right. Nick Foles. Like Hostetler, we have to cut Foles some slack because he's a career backup. And when he had to step up against Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, he held one of the best games of his career as he won a ring. Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco's 2012 playoff run with the Ravens has to be one of the most lucky runs in NFL history. Really, Flacco was simply a mediocre quarterback with a good supporting cast. And for the worst quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl, we have Trent Dilfer. Trent Dilfer was a traveling quarterback, no doubt. He landed on a rebuilding Ravens team in 2000 as a backup, and he soon got the starting role. Of course, the 2000 Ravens just happened to have a lot of talent that year. They held one of the best single-season defenses led by Ray Lewis, and a great receiving game with Shannon Sharpe. Once they reached the Super Bowl, they destroyed the New York Giants, allowing only 7 points. However, even though a ring felt great, there was a reason why Baltimore let Dilfer go after the season. It turns out Dilfer was the exact definition of a game-managing quarterback. What that means is that his job was to essentially cut down on turnovers and let the defense win games. Also, his passing stats were pretty bad. Dilfer never threw for more than 3,000 yards in a season, with him averaging 190 yards per game in his best. He had a completion percentage of 55 and threw for 16 more interceptions and touchdowns. However, as I stated, Baltimore failed to re-sign him, the only QB never to be re-signed after a Super Bowl victory. Dilfer played for 3 more teams, mostly as a backup, and would record a 5-12 record before exiting the league. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.